The last step is called resolve. And the key word in that is, at least in English, is the word solve. Okay? Because what you're doing is that in this part of the selling process is when you ask people to buy, sometimes they come back to you and say, I like it, but I can't afford it. Or I need to think about it. Or I need to ask my spouse. Or, how does this match up against other products like the mineral pump? So in other words, they're interested, but they're not quite ready to buy yet. So there's a way that we engage with them at that point. We're staying right with them. We don't leave, but we stay right with them. And we help them to see if we can help them solve their problem. So when you make sales calls, you're going to find out that sometimes you don't have to do that at all. Sometimes you just make the presentation, and when you go for the ask, they say, buy. Yes. They say, yeah, okay, let's buy it. Sometimes you don't have to do anything with the result. If you get to this point of the presentation, and the person says, no, I'm not interested. See, you've gone through all of this process, you've given them a full presentation, and they give you sort of just a blunt response of, no, I just don't want it, or no, I'm just not interested. Very clearly like that. Then you would treat that as a no. That means no. And if that happens at that point, then you would stop thank them for their time, and then ask about the pre-connect information about the people you're going to go see next. Now, this is very different than if no or I'm not interested happens during the first step here. If they were to say that, you would not stop. You would go right ahead and go into your second approach and your third approach and try to spark interest. So do you see the difference between the quality of the no, of the meaning no, that happens here versus one that happens here? Yeah, the difference is when they say no here, they don't really know what they're saying no to. So that is why we go back a second time and a third time in the approach, in the connect. We do it a second and then a third time to try to see if we can give them information that will help educate them. So if we go here and we go through the learn step, and we go to the educate step, and we go through the ask step, and then we hear I'm no or not interested, at least they're saying no or I'm not interested towards something that they at least understand. And we should respect that. And so that's when we would say thank you for your time. It was a pleasure meeting you. And the people next door, tell me about them. What is their last name? And get your pre-connect information and move on. Now, let's talk about the other 95% of the people, okay? Because you don't normally hear no or I'm not interested at this point. What you will hear is, I can't afford it. It's too expensive. Now, it's different, however. One difference is if their brother or sister or relative buys a filter from you and they have been referred, they've been recommended, they've been referred by them. You understand? So let's say I've gone to Vibo and I've shown it to him and he didn't buy. But let's say this is his brother, and his brother buys from me, and his brother says, go back and see Vibo, I'll go back and see Vibo. Now let's talk about the other objections you will hear, the other things that you hear at the ask step, that sometimes you're going to hear any one of these different objections. Or you'll hear, I need to shop around. I want to go to the market and see what the market might be selling. Okay? So any one of these that they say, no, this is not no. They are not saying no, and they're not saying I'm not interested. And this is one of the hardest things for salespeople to learn. You need to be an interpreter. A salesperson needs to be able to interpret what the person who is looking at your product is saying. So for any one of these, it's usually the reason that is behind what they're saying. It's like they'll say whatever this is, but there's really a reason that they don't say that's behind it all. And it's your job as a salesperson to figure out what it is that is the hidden objection, the thing they're not saying. This is what they're saying, but what they're not saying is really the objection. Once you know that, then you can help them solve it. So whatever they say is usually not the truth. And whenever you hear as an I can't afford it or it's too expensive, it's usually because people don't really value what the product is going to do for them yet. So anytime you hear any of those other things other than no or I'm not interested, it's like I can't afford it, or I need to think about it, or I need to ask my spouse. You will make sales out of those. In that, while you're sitting there with those people, you will make sales with those people. It's just how you handle it at that point that makes a difference. So sometimes you simply are going to need to share new information or more information with them to help answer the problem. Or you're going to repeat some information that you've already given them that they didn't understand. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to answer the objection directly, right away. So for example, if, let's say I'm selling to Tu, and Tu says, I need to ask my wife. What I will not say, what I won't say, would be very inappropriate to say is, why would you need to ask her? Aren't you the man in the family? Let's say it gives me an objection and says, I can't afford it. I can't afford it. And I'm on his property and I see that he does have money. I have a pretty good sense he has money. What I don't want to come back and say is, Vibel, yes you can afford it. Because I can see you can afford it. You wouldn't want to say that. I mean, because I know when I go shopping and I see something that I really want it, I really, really want it, I'll find the money to buy it. Good example of it, iPad, right? $500. $500. I didn't ask my wife. I wanted it so badly that I would even risk an argument with her over the fact that I bought it. That's how people make buying decisions, is when they want something bad enough, they buy it. The problem for you is in this step. If you did not do a good job in the learn step of engaging people and helping them really get a picture of what the cost is of having dirty water or having to boil water and all the pain that they have to go through to do that, that's where you lost the sale. That's where the problem is when you hear this kind of stuff. Sometimes it's because of the educate step, because there's something in there they didn't understand about how the product worked. Okay? Sometimes it's there, but very rare. So fundamentally, the way you solve the buying problem is by finding out first what is the real problem, and then second, giving more information that addresses that problem. In resolving a buying problem is when you hear it, you replay it or repeat it. You repeat it back to the customer. That's step one. So if you say that you can't afford it, then I'll say back to you, so what you're saying is you can't afford it. And when you repeat it, oftentimes they'll tell you more. And then after you repeat it, then you simply say, is there anything else? Or do you have any other concerns that would stop you from getting this? So he might say to me, well, I'm not quite sure, we've never really gotten sick from drinking our water out of the pond out back. So I'm not quite sure I'd want to spend my money on that. So then I'd say to okay, so what you're saying is, all these years you've been drinking water out of that pond and no one's ever gotten sick. And then I would say, besides that, is there anything else that would stand in the way of you getting a filter? He might say to me, no, that's it. That's it. That's the reason. So his first reason was, I need to think about it or I can't afford it. I can't remember which one it was. But anyway, he gave me a first reason, but there was another reason. And the real reason for him was that I'm just not sure I need it. Because we've been drinking water out of the pond and we've never gotten sick. So now at this point, see, I'm the salesperson. I want to spend time on the right problem. And so the right problem is the second problem that he's talked about, which is that he's just not sure that the product is needed. And then I would probably tell a few stories of other people that were similar to his situation that ended up buying from me. Other people who had not gotten sick from their pond, but in fact decided to go ahead and get a filter. And they saw a benefit from that. So I think I will be spending my time talking to him about the science behind it. I think I would backtrack and go back and make sure he understood the science of clean water and why it's important. So the first step is to replay the objection. Step 2 is that you're going to review the key features that interested the person when you were showing it to him. The things that seemed to appeal to him when you were showing it. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want him to get back into more of a positive frame of mind about the product. I want him to be thinking good thoughts about the product before we go any farther. Then after I've done that, then I'm going to go to step 3. Okay, step 3 is where I'm going to actually answer the real objection. Okay, so step 3 is to reveal new information. So a feature and a benefit that fits the question they have. A feature and a benefit that will help to answer the question he has. And then the second part is to tell a story or a testimonial, like we talked about earlier today, that answers, that it's about a person where the situation is very similar to theirs. And then the fourth step is to request or to resubmit the question. Ask again. The way you ask is not just a direct question about, well, do you want to buy it now? That's not what I mean by that. And then the second question you'd ask at that point is, can you see why so many families have been signing up for the Tunsan now? You might say at that point, well, it's like Mr. Lee said to me. He said, I want my family to be safe, and this is a small price to pay for that peace of mind. Wouldn't you agree? So that's an example of step 4, which is, is asking them to make a new decision. You're asking them to reconsider it. Those are the kind of questions you would ask at that step. And if they say yes, twice, then you say something like, great, well, in order to get you started, I just need to know where you want to set it up. Where do you want to set up the filter? Over there or over there? Now remember that question, it's a very good question to ask. Okay? That's a question of ownership. Okay, it's a very important question. So tell me, where would you put it? Would you leave it down here or would you put it upstairs? It's an indirect question that gauges their interest, where you can tell what their interest is. Okay? So that's the method. That's the method of how do you solve buying problems.